Now let's look at dropping columns. Sometimes, the previous topic was you look at rows, and then if there are any missing values, X number of missing values, one or all or threshold number, then you get rid of those rows. Now let's look at it from the other angle, which is columns, and then see whether we want to drop. So again, we'll start with the default. Okay, now default for drop NA is axis equal to 0, so that means it will look at the rows. So to look at columns, you have to say axis equal to 1, and then if you don't say anything else, then how is any. So even if one missing value is present in the column, then that column will be gone, right? So if you do that, then all the columns are gone. You don't have any data at all. Okay. Now if you say how equal to all, so then the column will be dropped only if all the values in the column are missing values. Of course, there is no such column, so no column gets dropped. And then of course there is this thresh parameter like previously. Suppose we want to drop columns with more than 30% missing. So that means your thresh is 70%. Okay, remember, thresh is how many good values there are in a column. So, so you need to first calculate that number. So you take so now you're looking at the column, so how many values are in that column? That's the length of the data frame. So LEN DF2, that's going to give us how many values are there in a column, and then for 30% missing, 1 minus 0.3 would be the thresh. Okay, and use that here, and then it looks like V3 was the culprit, so V3 is gone. V3 did not have 70% good values. It had less than 70% good values. So that's gone. Okay. So drop NA can be used row wise or column wise. So no, all right. Let's look at this one, DFQ2 from above. All right. How many missing values are there in each column? Okay, so DFQ2. Now is an A, that's going to convert everything into true or false, right? Now we want it for every column, right? So we need to do sum, okay, but that sum you should have okay, so that sum, okay, so that's going to look at each column and it tells you how many missing values are there in each column. Okay, and if a column, if columns with at least one missing value are dropped, how many columns will be dropped? Okay, so we have DFQ2 dot drop NA axis equal to 1. Okay, so it should be DFQ2. Okay, so that means how many were dropped? How many columns will be dropped? Well, it looks like there are only 2 columns left, but to get the answer, you need to do DFQ2. So find the length of DFQ2 and then find the length of that. So, well, already. We have to. We have to start from DFQ2. I've already dropped everything, so there is nothing there. DFQ. Oh, I have to do. I need to do columns. The length of the columns is what we want, right? Okay, so 6 columns would drop. Okay, and see if columns with more than 20% missing values are dropped, how many columns will remain. So we have a well, let's call it thresh Q4 is, now we want to look at the columns, so it should be length of DFQ2 times what, 1 minus 0.2. So that will be the thresh. So 20% missing value, so 80% must be good value for each column. So each column, how many data points are there? It's the number of rows. So that's your length. Length of the data frame, that will give you how many rows there are, times 1 minus 0.2, and then you would use DFQ2 drop NA axis equal to 1. So you look at each column, and then you would use thresh equal to thresh Q4. Okay. So now we don't know how many were lost, so use the columns. So you need to do columns. Okay, so this will give you the length or how many columns there are after you drop. And length of DFQ2 columns. So that would be the original number of columns, okay, minus the number of columns after you drop. So then that tells you how many were actually dropped. So we dropped 2 columns.